Imagine Europe between the years 500 and 1500 AD. This era, often referred to as the Middle Ages, spanned a millennium and was marked by significant transformations in society, culture, and politics. It was a time when the remnants of the Roman Empire gave way to a patchwork of kingdoms and principalities, each with its own unique customs and traditions. The landscape of Europe was dotted with imposing castles, bustling villages, and vast stretches of farmland. This period, known as the Middle Ages, was a time of castles, knights, and vast farmlands. Castles served as both fortresses and homes for the nobility, standing as symbols of power and protection. Knights, clad in armor, were the military elite sworn to defend their lords and uphold chivalric codes. The farmlands, tended by peasants, were the backbone of the medieval economy, providing the sustenance needed for survival. Life was very different from what we know today. Villages were the heart of medieval life, where people lived, worked, and socialized. Markets were vibrant places, filled with the sounds of haggling merchants, the smells of fresh produce, and the sight of colorful goods from distant lands. These markets were not just centers of commerce, but also hubs of information and social interaction. People lived in villages or on manors ruled by lords and ladies. The manor was the basic unit of landholding, and the lord of the manor wielded considerable power over the lives of the villagers. The relationship between the lord and the villagers was one of mutual obligation. The villagers worked the land and provided services, while the lord offered protection and justice. Daily life revolved around farming, crafts, and religion. Farming was the primary occupation, with the seasons dictating the rhythm of life. Craftsmen such as blacksmiths, carpenters, and weavers played crucial roles in the community, providing essential goods and services. Religion was interwoven into the fabric of daily life, with the church calendar marking important events and festivals. Life was hard, with limited access to medicine and education. Most people were peasants, living in modest homes with few comforts. Illnesses were common, and medical knowledge was rudimentary, often relying on herbal remedies and the skills of local healers. Education was a privilege of the few, typically reserved for the clergy and the nobility. People lived in simple houses, often sharing space with their animals. These homes were typically made of wood and thatch, with dirt floors and minimal furnishings. The hearth was the center of the home, providing warmth and a place to cook. Animals, such as chickens and pigs, were kept close by, sometimes even within the house, to protect them from theft and to provide a ready source of food. Despite the hardships, people found joy in celebrations, music, and storytelling. Festivals were eagerly anticipated events, offering a break from the daily grind and a chance to come together as a community. Music, dancing, and feasting were central to these celebrations, providing a sense of joy and camaraderie. Storytelling, whether around the hearth or in the village square, was a cherished tradition, passing down tales of heroism, morality, and wonder. The Catholic Church played a central role in people's lives, offering spiritual guidance and influencing social norms. The church was not just a place of worship, but also a center of learning and community life. Priests and monks were respected figures, providing education, charity, and moral leadership. The Church's teachings shaped people's understanding of the world and their place in it, reinforcing the social order and offering hope of salvation. The feudal system dictated social order, with peasants serving their lords in exchange for protection and land. This system created a hierarchy of obligations and loyalties, with the king at the top, followed by powerful nobles, knights, and at the bottom the peasants. Each level of society had its own roles and responsibilities, creating a complex web of relationships that defined medieval life. It was a world where tradition and hierarchy reigned supreme. The nobility lived in relative luxury, enjoying privileges and power, while the majority of the population toiled to sustain them. Yet within this rigid structure, there was also a sense of order and stability, with each person knowing their place and duties. The Middle Ages were a time of contrasts, where hardship and joy, faith and superstition coexisted in a delicate balance. Medieval Europe was built on a strict social hierarchy, much like a ladder with distinct rungs. This hierarchy was not just a social construct, but a way of life that dictated every aspect of existence. From the moment you were born, your place in this hierarchy was determined, and it was nearly impossible to move from one rung to another. This system was deeply ingrained in the culture and laws of the time, making it a defining feature of medieval society. At the very top sat the king, the ultimate ruler of the land. The king was not just a political leader, but also a symbol of unity and power. His decisions affected the entire kingdom, and his authority was considered divine, often believed to be granted by God himself. The king lived in grand castles, surrounded by opulence and luxury, far removed from the struggles of the common people. His court was a place of intrigue and power plays, where nobles vied for his favor and sought to influence his decisions. Below him were the powerful nobles who held lands and swore loyalty to the king. These nobles were the backbone of the feudal system, managing vast estates and overseeing the peasants who worked the land. They lived in manors and castles, enjoying a life of relative comfort and privilege. In return for their loyalty and military support, the king granted them lands and titles, making them some of the most influential people in the kingdom. Their power was not absolute, however, as they were always subject to the will of the king. Knights, known for their chivalry and skill in battle, were also part of the noble class. They were the warriors of the medieval world, trained from a young age to fight and uphold the code of chivalry. This code emphasized virtues like bravery, honor, and respect for women. Knights played a crucial role in the defense of the realm, often participating in tournaments and battles. They were granted land by the nobles in exchange for their military service, and their status was one of both respect and responsibility. Then came the clergy, the religious leaders who held significant influence over people's lives. The church was a powerful institution in medieval Europe, with its own hierarchy and vast wealth. Clergy members, from local priests to high-ranking bishops, played a vital role in the community. They provided spiritual guidance, education, and charity, and their approval was often necessary for major decisions. The church also owned large tracts of land and had its own courts, making it a significant political force as well. At the bottom of this social ladder were the peasants, the farmers and laborers who made up the vast majority of the population. Life for peasants was harsh and demanding, with long hours spent working the land to produce food for the entire kingdom. They lived in simple homes, often with little more than the basic necessities. Despite their hard work, they had few rights and were subject to the whims of their lords. Their lives were marked by a constant struggle for survival, with little hope of improving their social standing. This rigid system determined almost every aspect of a person's life, including who they could marry. Marriages were often arranged to strengthen alliances and secure wealth rather than for love. Social mobility was nearly impossible, and people were expected to accept their place in the hierarchy. This acceptance was reinforced by both the church and the state, which taught that the social order was divinely ordained. Despite its rigidity, this system provided a sense of stability and order in a world that could be unpredictable and dangerous. Love, as we understand it today, wasn't the driving force behind marriage in medieval Europe. Marriage was more of a practical arrangement, a way to secure land, wealth, or political alliances, especially for the noble classes. Parents played a significant role in choosing their children's spouses, considering factors like social standing and family ties. Love, of course, wasn't entirely absent. People still developed feelings for each other, but romantic love wasn't seen as essential for a successful marriage. Once married, couples were expected to fulfill their roles and responsibilities, with men as providers and protectors and women as homemakers and mothers. Life in a medieval household was a communal affair, with everyone having a role to play. The man, as head of the household, was responsible for providing for his family and protecting them from harm. He worked the land, managed finances, and represented the family in village matters. The woman's domain was the home. She cooked, cleaned, cared for the children, and managed the household chores. She was also responsible for spinning wool, weaving cloth, and making clothes for the family. Children from a young age were expected to contribute to the household chores, helping with farming, cooking, or caring for younger siblings. The childhood in medieval times was very different from what we know today. The concept of childhood as a distinct phase of life was not recognized in the same way it is now. Children were often seen as miniature adults, expected to take on responsibilities and roles within the family and community from a very young age. Their lives were shaped by the social and economic structures of the time, which dictated their daily activities and future prospects. Children were seen as miniature adults and were expected to contribute to the family's well-being from a young age. This often meant helping with agricultural work, tending to animals, or assisting with household chores. The division of labor was clear, and children were integral to the functioning of the household. Boys and girls had different roles, with boys often working alongside their fathers in the fields or learning a trade, while girls helped their mothers with domestic tasks. Infant mortality rates were high, and many children didn't survive past their early years. Diseases, poor nutrition, and lack of medical knowledge contributed to the high mortality rates. Families often faced the heart-wrenching reality of losing multiple children. This harsh reality influenced how children were raised and the expectations placed upon them. Surviving children were often cherished, but also prepared for the harsh realities of life from an early age. Toys and games existed, but play was often intertwined with learning essential skills. Wooden toys, simple games, and activities were designed to teach children the skills they would need as adults. For example, boys might play with miniature tools or practice archery, while girls might have dolls that helped them learn about childcare. Play was not just for entertainment, it was a way to prepare children for their future roles in society. Education was limited for most children, especially those in peasant families. Formal schooling was rare, and literacy rates were low. Most learning took place at home or through apprenticeships. Peasant children learned practical skills that were essential for survival, such as farming, cooking, and basic craftsmanship. Education was a luxury that few could afford, and it was often reserved for the children of the wealthy or noble classes. Boys might receive some training in farming or crafts from their fathers, learning the skills necessary to take over the family business or trade. This hands-on training was crucial for their future livelihoods. Boys were expected to become proficient in their father's trade, whether it was farming, blacksmithing, or another craft. This apprenticeship system ensured that skills were passed down through generations. While girls learned household skills from their mothers, they were taught to cook, clean, sew, and manage the household. These skills were essential for running a home and were passed down from mother to daughter. Girls were also expected to help care for younger siblings and assist with other domestic tasks. The division of labor was clear, and each gender had specific roles and responsibilities within the household. Noble children, however, had access to tutors and were educated in subjects like reading, writing, and Latin. Their education was more formal and comprehensive, preparing them for roles in leadership, governance, and the church. Noble boys might learn about chivalry, warfare, and estate management, while noble girls were often educated in the arts, literature, and the social graces expected of their status. This education set noble children apart from their peasant counterparts and prepared them for their future roles in society.